The weight of an unseen burden. There was once a man who had everything, or at least that's what the world believed. He had the kind of life that gleamed from the outside, the kind that people secretly envied when scrolling through the highlights of someone else's success. A tall house with shining windows, a car that purred like a quiet promise of accomplishment, a family that smiled in photographs, and a job title that made introductions easy at gatherings. But behind those walls, behind that silent confidence he wore each day, there lived a growing emptiness. Every morning began the same. The alarm clock would pierce the stillness before dawn, and the man would rise mechanically. His eyes would catch the reflection in the mirror, tired, restless yet determined. The coffee would brew, emails would pile up, and the same cycle of meetings, deadlines, and small victories would repeat like a rhythm too familiar to question. But in that rhythm, something crucial was missing, something he could not yet name. He often told himself that this was life, that one must keep pushing, keep filling their jar with all the things the world measured success by: money, recognition, progress, control. But as the years passed, his jar felt heavier and yet emptier. One evening, as the rain tapped softly against his office window, he looked up from his desk and felt it, that strange silence between achievements. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of something forgotten. Around him, framed certificates gleamed under the dim light. The screens hummed with unread messages. The world outside carried on, but inside he felt time slipping through his fingers like sand, quiet and merciless. At home, his children's laughter echoed faintly from another room, but he was too busy to notice. His wife often sat waiting at the dinner table a little longer each night, until she began to eat without him. The house was full of life, but to him it felt distant, like a film playing behind glass. There were moments when he caught himself wondering when the wait began, when the invisible burden took shape. Perhaps it started when he began chasing the next promotion, or maybe when he stopped visiting his parents, telling himself that next weekend would be better, or when he started trading sleep for ambition. Whatever the moment, he could no longer trace it back. It had simply become who he was. He was proud but tired, successful but hollow, surrounded but alone. One night, as he worked late once again, the janitor, an old man with gentle eyes and a slow, thoughtful way of moving, walked past his office. The man barely noticed him, but the janitor paused, looked at the glowing screen, the papers scattered across the desk, and said softly, almost as if to himself, "An empty jar makes the loudest sound." The man didn't respond. He was too deep in his numbers, his deadlines, his unspoken race. Yet that sentence lingered. It followed him into his dreams, into his commute, into the quiet spaces between moments. An empty jar. What did that mean? Days turned into weeks. Life went on. But slowly something began to stir within him, a quiet discomfort that grew stronger each time he looked at his reflection. He realized he could no longer ignore the hollow feeling. He began to question the structure of his life, how it was built, what it stood upon, and what it had cost him. He noticed things now. The way his daughter hesitated before knocking on his office door, the way his wife's eyes no longer met his during breakfast, the way his phone buzzed endlessly, but his heart felt quiet. That weekend, for the first time in months, he decided to stop. To simply stop. No laptop, no phone, no appointments. Just a stillness he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched the sunrise, a sight he had long forgotten. The sky was vast, the air cold, and for a fleeting second he felt something inside him breathe again. But still, he didn't know how to change. He didn't know where to begin. The jar was full of everything the world said he should have. Yet there was no room for what truly mattered. Later that day, while sorting through an old box in the attic, he found something unexpected, a simple glass jar. It was covered in dust, the label long faded, but when he held it, he remembered. It had once belonged to his father. As a boy, he used to watch his father drop coins and small stones into that jar. Each stone represented something, though he never really asked what. It was just one of those quiet rituals that seemed ordinary at the time. But now, holding that jar in his hands, he felt an odd connection to something he couldn't name, as if the answer he had been searching for all along was somewhere within this empty glass. He cleaned the jar and placed it on his desk. It was simple, transparent, unremarkable, yet it drew his attention every time he passed by. He didn't know why, but he felt compelled to keep it there, as though it was waiting to teach him something. Over the next few days, he found himself staring at it more often, watching it sit silently on his desk, empty but full of meaning. The more he looked at it, the more he began to realize that it wasn't the jar that was empty. It was him. Something inside whispered that life was not about how much he could fit into it, but about what he chose to fill it with. And that realization, though faint, began to shift something deep within. The jar sat there, still and waiting, as though it held a secret that only time would reveal. The man didn't know it yet, but that empty jar would soon become the symbol of his greatest transformation, one that would change the way he lived, loved, and understood the meaning of time itself. The lesson was waiting to be discovered, but first he would have to face the truth he had long avoided, that in trying to fill his life with everything, he had left no room for the things that truly mattered. And so his journey toward rediscovering his priorities and himself was about to begin.